it
very
was
dimly.
it was pretty okay. I mean, it was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
so we are live on Facebook now, and I would like to also share. Uh, oh, the link is not, but you have the link, right? You have the. I have shared the link with you, the Facebook link.
okay. Okay.
Okay, and okay, anyone from your mentee group, they are going to join.
I'm not sure actually.
Acha, acha, okay, no problem. What about your Prabhu?
He has to be with my daughter, right?
Acha, acha, okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's start. Swati Mataji also going to join probably sometime. And I
Okay.
have already connected to Facebook. Okay, so uh, as discussed earlier, we are going to change format this time, and we'll be having devotees in our group speaking. They will be sharing. They will be presenting different topics on Krishna consciousness. So this time we have with us Her Grace Alicia Mataji. I'm very happy and glad that devotees they are coming up with presenting Krishna consciousness. At least I get to hear from them because I was the one who was speaking earlier. So it was very austere for all of you, and I'm very happy now that I'll be able to hear from all of you. So we have Her Grace Alisha Matari. She is going to speak on prayers by Gajendra. Um, just a short introduction about her. Okay, one second. Yeah, so Her Grace Alisha Mataji is an aspiring disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. She joined Krishna Consciousness in 2012, and she would attend programs in Sri Sri Radha Gopinath Temple, Chopati. She was based in Mulund, Mumbai, and currently she's based in London, associated with Soho Temple and the Bhaktivedanta Manor Temple. Uh, she was doing wonderful services in London. She used to go on Sankirtan on Saturdays and is also doing some DT kitchen seva at Soho Temple. Apart from this, she was actively involved in book distribution back in Mumbai and distributing a lot of books and doing seva at Radha Gopinath Temple along with her job. She is very enthusiastic listener and eager to know about Krishna consciousness, speaks very gently and very humble Vaishnavi. So we are very fortunate, Aisha Mataji, to hear from you. Thank you so much for presenting something so that we could benefit out of it.
Thank you, Prabhu, for giving me this chance to speak. So we are going to speak from Canto 8, Chapter 3, verse number 18. Prabhu, can you read out the text, please?
Okay, Aridhra Prabhu, can you do that?
Yes. Canto 8, chapter 3, verse 16, right?
Not 16, 18.
18, I'm sorry. Okay. So, opening up with the base, just give me like 30 seconds.
Okay, so it's what Canto 3? No, Canto 8, chapter 3. And verse number?
Mataji, is it
Verse number 18.
18.
Okay. Okay, so I've also shared in the chat box.
Okay, yeah, I can read it. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 8, Chapter 3, verse number 18. Atmatmajapta grihavitta janeshu shakter dushprapanaya gunasanga vivarjitaya muktatmabhihi swahridaye paribhavati bhavitaya jnanatmane bhagavate nama ishwaraya. Shall I get a translation also?
Yeah.
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My Lord, those who are completely freed from material contamination always meditate upon you within the course of their hearts. You are extremely difficult to attain for those like me who are too attached to mental concoction, home, relatives, friends, money, servants, and assistants. You are the supreme personality of Godhead, uncontaminated by the modes of nature. You are the reservoir of all enlightenment, the supreme controller. I therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, talking about this verse, if we analyze the first 5 verses, Gajendra is basically just introducing uh, how Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, how he's the supreme spirit, the raw material, the cause of all causes, and how it is through him that the material world sometimes comes into appearance, and then it there's dissolution. Krishna is the cause of everything. So first few verses is simply speaking, establishing the position of Krishna, and then from the 18th verse he speaks about how what is the eligibility to understand and to achieve his lotus feet. So in verse 18, as he says that only those who are completely free from material contamination can meditate upon you within the core of their hearts. And this prayer, this verse resonates with what Kunti Maharani also said, that you are very difficult to attain for those who are attached to family, relatives, friends, those who want to expand their wealth, servants, assistants. So basically, this verse talks about the principle of surrender and being free from mental concoctions. So if we look at the dictionary meaning of the word concoction, it means that something that is cooked, and like what is the ingredient for the mind to come up with something, then that those are our own thoughts and opinions and views. So like Prabhupada used to say, anyone who says according to me, or this is what I feel is right, Prabhupada would say he's a rascal. So because a rascal will not believe, he'll have no faith in the words of sadhu, scriptures, and guru. So he will just excuse my daughter. She might interrupt us in between. So just tolerate it. She does. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So yes. So yeah. So the first thing Gajendra says is being free from mental concoction, and that's why it is so important to just have implicit and even to the extent of having complete conviction that I am a total fool and I know nothing. Unless we have that attitude of not knowing anything and just having complete faith in Guru and complete faith in the words of, in the books of our acharyas, we can't even begin our spiritual life. So so yeah, you are extremely difficult to attain for those like me. He's putting himself also in the same category, who are too attached to mental concoction, home, relatives, friends, money, servants, and assistants. You are the supreme personality of Godhead, uncontaminated by the modes of nature. So like just give me a moment. Yeah, sorry, Prabhu. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem, it's fine.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, first is implicit faith in the words of, and that's why hearing is so important, because unless we hear with complete faith, like when Lord Chaitanya he met Prabodhanand Saraswati, he said, you know, my guru says I'm a complete fool, and Prabhupada said that this is the attitude that we should have. And so by this way we'll get knowledge. So once mental concoction is gone, knowledge enters the heart. But then after knowledge, we also have to analyze our goals. I mean, are we after money? Do we have ulterior motives? Why? I mean, what are we doing? I mean, we are taking association, we are doing hearing, chanting, but what is it in the core of our hearts that we desire? Do we simply just want to be the servant of the servant of the servant? Do we really want to please Krishna? This is the question we have to keep asking ourselves all the time. I mean, by every word, action, are we trying to please Krishna, or are we just, you know, trying to fulfill our own selfish, egoistic desires? Like Prabhupada used to say that there is gross sex and then there's subtle sex in the form of seeking profit, distinction, and adoration. So so there has to be a lot of self evaluation in this regard, because without that we will just, you know, have a theoretical understanding about Krishna's opulence and Krishna's greatness. But to enter the depths of bhakti, it has to be less of us. That means less of our mind, less of our intelligence, and more about Krishna, and more about Guru, more about the desires of our Guru, the desire of Krishna. And like many devotees, they wonder that, you know, are we really pleasing Krishna? Are we really pleasing Guru or not? How do we know? So I think if we follow the process, rising early, chanting 16 rounds, and maintaining strict sadhana, then we'll automatically know that we are doing the right thing. I mean, otherwise, like we do feel disturbed when, you know, we've not chanted our rounds. So there is some force that tries to tell us that we are going off track sometimes. So this is like the first step of surrender. um And then Prabhupada goes on to say that although the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes into the material world, he is unaffected by the modes of material nature. He is not contaminated. So, yes, I mean, since we are so much affected by the modes, only someone who has nothing to do with the modes of nature and who is, in fact, the cause of these modes can help us. Because, you know, if we are taking shelter of fallible soldiers, we'll end up nowhere, because whomever we meet, they are simply a product of their mental concoction. um, unless it's like Guru, who's like a complete transparent via medium of Krishna and whose subtle body has completely vanquished, only such a person can give us true knowledge. Or at least those who are sincerely aspiring to reach that stage. And so the Supreme Personality of Godhead can be understood only by the Mukta Atma, the liberated soul. Only the liberated person can constantly think of Krishna. So at least if we can't, we've not reached that stage where we can constantly, I mean, Prabhupada's standard was 24/7 devotional service. So this might seem too far-fetched for us, because 7 hours maybe we are just sleeping. So that's like already remaining 15-16 hours. Maybe we are just, you know, even while chanting, actually we are not always thinking about Krishna. Our mind dwells on other things. So we have to reach that point, but so we have to increase both the quality and quantity, and we have to keep doing a lot of self monitoring, that what is it that I'm seeking. Am I seeking, you know, enjoyment with my family and friends? Because if we see this story, like Gajendra was going to Trikuta mountains and he was in the middle of the lake, and it was like the perfect holiday destination. That, I mean, I think if Trikuta was on earth, it might be in the top 10 places to visit, something of that sort. So the place was perfect, the weather was perfect, he was surrounded by his family, friends, children, and he was the king of elephants. So he was already popular, very powerful. He was loved by everyone. There was, you know, like, as they say, he had made it. You know, the people who are successful, that's how we refer, that, you know, he's made it. And but that's what, in the material world, tragedy comes when you least expect it. And yeah, so I think there's a prayer by Lord Brahma in the 10th canto where he says that an intelligent person constantly seeks the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, and does not depend on his own strength, uh, uh, to live in this material world where there is danger at every step. And uh, and so to have a pessimistic view about the world sometimes helps, because it helps, especially in this path of Krishna consciousness, because we know no matter where we go, whichever part of the world we live in, there'll always be threefold miseries. There'll always be trouble by other living entities. There'll be problems by causes of nature, epidemics, pandemics. um, so I mean, and we have to then increase our dependence on Krishna. And as we know, he tried to fight a lot when Gajendra was when the crocodile was biting. He was using all his might, all his strength to fight him. And but as we know that it wasn't his forte to fight in the water. Land was his forte, and water was crocodile's forte. I mean, that was his natural environment. And so we are also in a very unnatural environment in this world, and whether we see or not, crocodile, which represents Kala, that bite is always there. Is so we have to change our vision. No matter where we are, we always have to know that I am in the jaws of the crocodile. And the more we realize it, only then we can take shelter of Krishna. Otherwise, we may spend years and years in Krishna consciousness, but if we are still attached to many material designations, and we are attached to our position, we are attached to getting feeble, like flickering pleasures out of our family members and society and friends, we'll not make tangible progress.
No.
Because to constantly know the temporary nature and the precarious state we are in, our state in this world is actually very precarious. And Prabhupada used to always say that nobody knows how old they are. Like old in the literal sense means that we are just about to die. So someone who's going to die at 30 and he's 28, he's already old because he's going to die in another 2 years. So nobody knows how old they are and when death will come to them. So it's good to always have that in mind. And like, and then at least whatever happiness or distress comes, at least there'll be a strong foundation. And if we have that strong foundation of spiritual truths which are ingrained in our hearts, we won't be too bogged down when we actually see the crocodile literally coming to us. Don't do it. So, Prabhu, I think I will end this session and I'll just ask maybe if anybody has some questions or comments.
Okay. So are you done with the presentation, or it's because you are not in a position to continue?
I can go on, but yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a disturbance. That's why I thought.
Okay. Well, you can continue for another 10-15 minutes.
She's trying to press these buttons and she might just, suddenly pause the video and.
Okay. ठीक है. Okay, no problem. Okay, so
A moment, Prabhu.
Yeah. So, Premnasa Prabhu, are we waiting for Mataji to continue?
yeah, I think so. Probably.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I think she's okay now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so yes, and Radhanath Maharaji always speaks about this pastime, and he gives example of these famous wrestlers. And he said that they were like champions in this world, and they were just bitten by a mosquito. And he says, what is the size of the mosquito's biceps compared to them? So nature teaches us in various ways, and it's also a very hope-giving story, because as we know, Gajendra was King Indradyumna, and he had done quite a substantial amount of devotional service in his previous life. So it is hope giving that no matter what happens, wherever we end in this lifetime, in the next lifetime, we might forget, but Krishna won't forget whatever little we have done. And yes, so I mean, Bhagavatam, if you analyze Bhagavatam, it is very, very hope giving. It's encouraging. Bhagavatam is a friend. I mean, it's just talking to you as a friend, giving you examples. It starts off from the 4th canto. It talks about Daksh Prajapati and how he was into Vedic sacrifices, and then Bhagavatam rejects Vedic sacrifices. It tells you to go higher. Then in 4th canto later it talks about Dhruv Maharaj, and then 5th canto it talks about Rishabh's instructions, Bharat Maharaj's story. 6th canto is about Ajamil, and then building up 7th canto is like total surrender by Prahlad Maharaj and absolute fearlessness. And then in 8th canto, so because in Kali Yuga we need strong examples, and Lord Chaitanya also came to teach us, and then we can know whom to look up to. So, and when we can read these prayers to Krishna and we can read it out especially in this month of Kartik, so that remembrance of Krishna increases and there's a tangible experience of it. Otherwise, it can also be a m- very much like a ritual that we just go to the temple and we just do our 16 rounds and just go and say Hari Bol to everyone, and then it simply becomes a social club. And in fact, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur once said that if you're not sufficiently hearing chanting sincerely, then all your activities, even the preaching that you do, becomes karma kand. So preaching, which is like the highest thing, even that becomes karma kand. So we have to, uh, we all should aspire to become deeply realized souls. And pastimes of Gajendra and other such stories in Bhagavatam, it gives us a wake up call so that we go deeper and deeper and just dive in this ocean of transcendental knowledge, because to lead transcendental lives we need to have transcendental knowledge, which keeps coming in our mind, not that we just hear it in a class and then we are out and we just forget about it and lead life like any other materialist down the street. We have to constantly remember these stories from Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrit, wonderful examples. Both the books are filled with so many examples of devotees who constantly took shelter of Krishna, and who, like Gajendra, in the end, he said, I don't want to just be all right and be alive and go back to my normal life. I don't. He was dreading his animal body, and he said, "Now I just want to serve you. I just want to completely surrender my life to you." So ultimately, we all want to reach that level, and if we are not taking small steps each day, then maybe 20, 30 years down the line we'll think that I've spent so many years in the moment, but it's a movement. Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada would called it the Hare Krishna movement. So we have to move our consciousness to higher and higher and more subtler realizations. And like Rajnath Swami says that one has to be of this world, but again not be of this world. So it may be very natural to some devotees. It's very natural to them. For some it requires efforts, but yes, that's why a lot of substantial hearing and substantial reading, at least for an hour and a half in a day, apart from our chanting, that's needed. Otherwise, it's just like you can feel the difference, like maybe for 1 or 2 weeks, if we've not heard, if we've not spent time reading Prabhupada's purports, then we do feel that we are having our attachments elsewhere. And when we are reading these books, there are so many cobwebs in our mind, and these cobwebs, the entanglements that are there, we feel, it's getting released, and we are experiencing higher reality. And then, as Prabhupada gives the example that death, for a devotee, death is the most pleasant encounter, because then for a kitten it's the loving embrace of a cat, but for a rat it is death. So Gajendra's story, uh, we have to implement it in our life, so that we don't end up becoming the rat, and when death comes, we can't even with a steady mind remember Krishna, because death is the ultimate test. And if we are not realizing that every day, with every passing of the sun, every passing of the day and night, I'm one moment closer to death, then it becomes very scary if it happens all of a sudden. Like today only I heard about His Holiness Bhakti Madhurya Govind Swami. He left his body yesterday. Krishna Nandini Devi Dasi was also a Prabhupada disciple. She left her body. So I mean, such great souls who made so much contribution. Uh, we we also never know. I mean, what's in store for us, especially in this pandemic. I mean, no matter how wonderfully we look after ourselves, it is a scary time, and that's why to hear and to analyze scriptures, to hear, to discuss, to implement it in our lives, it's so crucial. So yeah, I hope that was okay, Premraj Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you so much. Very nice class. So nicely you explained everything, especially related to the context of the previous life of Gajendra. And I really liked when you said that Krishna consciousness is a movement described by Prabhupada, that we keep moving. We are not stagnant, but we move from lower consciousness to higher consciousness. So that was a wonderful point, and everything beautifully explained. So thank you so much. I would like to hear from devotees if they have any comments or questions for Alisha Madhuri.
Yes, Hare Krishna Madhuri. I like you covered so many points, and beginning with that mental concoction thing. I like the part where you said, and that really stuck to me. When concoction goes, knowledge enters the heart. And then towards the end, you said the cobwebs. Your analogies are like they just they just drive the point home. So the way you said cobwebs, those cobwebs are what don't allow real knowledge to go into the heart. So I like that analogy very much. Very it's like whatever you're saying is driving home, just driving home very well. So you are connecting so many things, not just the past times, but also what lesson do we get out of the past time. So that's like where you said about crocodile representing Kal. That bite is always there. The more quicker we realize it, the better it is for us. So yeah, it was very instructive. I don't particularly have a question, but I just made a lot of notes on what you were saying.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm so sorry for the interruption. I wish
We
I
forgot
could
about it.
add pleasant sound and my daughter not disrupting in between. Really sorry for that.
No, that's
I
fine. No
don't think it
problem.
was unpleasant at all.
Okay, Swati Madhuri, you have any comment or question?
Hare Krishna, Dhanvat Pranam. Thank you, Alisha Mataji. It was a very wonderful class. And you explained about how we should always remember that, like King Gajendra, even though he had many facilities, everything that one needs, still we have to remember that we are always in the clutches of crocodile. So that was very
You
nice.
realize it more than all of us, Mataji.
Yeah, and also the other one is about you mentioned about attachment. That was also very nice. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a question. You did explain about Gajendra in the previous life, but what about the crocodile? Can you also share about it?
Well, I think yes, I did hear that crocodile was a Gandharva in his past life, and he was cursed by Agastya Muni, and yeah, I mean, as a Gandharva, he could have led opulent, uh, self-indulgent, hedonistic life, but because he was cursed. And then when Lord Vishnu came, in fact, there's, I think I heard somewhere that Vishnu was telling his carrier Garud that you rush, I want to rush towards Gajendra, take me to him fast. So that's how eager Lord Vishnu was to deliver Gajendra. And then even for the crocodile, because he wanted to fulfill his devotee's promise, even he got liberated. So I think he did some aparad. Was it an aparad towards a cow or something? I don't remember the exact history of why he was cursed. But yes, I mean, if
Okay.
we,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, so you have really pretty nicely covered the point, but the the exact situation was that he was a Gandharva called as Hu. So there were two
Mhm.
brothers, Hu and Ha.
Yeah.
And so when you mentioned about the cow, that cow pastime was connected to Ha. That's how
Okay.
we just recently celebrated Bahul Ashtami.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
haha is coming in the form of, I think, one of the cows or something, or maybe
Oh,
the
okay.
tiger. I don't remember that exactly, but Hu, he actually offended Deval Rishi because he was a
Mhm.
Gandharva. He was taking bath. He was enjoying with the woman in the water,
Mhm.
and then Deval Rishi was doing some austerity inside the water.
Mhm.
So then I think in his intoxicated state, he pulled the leg of Deval Rishi, Deval Rishi, and that's how he was actually. So this is the nature of a crocodile, right? To pull the leg or to pull someone. So that's how he got
Yeah.
cursed to become a crocodile, right?
Yeah. See, that's
So
how
this
it
was
is.
the.
We are all intoxicated in one way or the other, and we are laughing at him. Actually, we have our own intoxications.
Yeah. In fact, I would like to share a couple of points, because it's so coincident that you took up this topic, and I just finished the fourth chapter of the eighth canto, because this is the third time I'm
Mhm.
reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I just finished
Mhm.
the fourth chapter of it. So it is very fresh in my memory. And yeah, so Deval Rishi cursed Hu, and he became a crocodile. And Agastya Muni cursed Indra Maharaj in the previous life
Yeah.
for no reason, for no reason, just because he was actually in the state of ecstasy, at the state of Bhau. He was a pure devotee of the Lord, and he was in meditation. So he was absorbed in meditation, and that time Agastya Muni came along with his disciples, and he saw that the king is not receiving him properly. He was like silent. He was not answering. He is not responding. So he felt offended about it, and then he cursed him. So it also reminds of the pastime of Rup Goswami, the similar pastime, that Rup Goswami was also completely absorbed in remembering the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And then there was one particular devotee who was, I think he was probably uh, blind or something. I don't remember that, but he came to Rup Goswami, and then he felt that Rup Goswami is also like ignoring him, although he was. I don't think he was blind, but maybe he had some defect. He was not able to walk properly.
Mhm.
So what happened is, when Rupa Swami was meditating in the pastimes, he started laughing because he saw a very humorous pastime in the Leela of Radha and Krishna.
Mhm.
So then he came, and so externally now Rupa Goswami is in meditation, his eyes are closed, and this devotee comes and he sees that just because he's not able to walk properly, Rupa Goswami is laughing at him. So he felt
Mhm.
sad about it, a bit disappointed about it, and then he
Mhm.
left from there. So now what happened is, Rupa Goswami's meditation broke because of this. So even though it was unintentional, I mean, it was not at all an offense, first of all, but it wasn't, you can say that it was an unintentional offense
Mhm.
kind of thing. So when his meditation broke, he realized that this is definitely due to the offense which I committed to someone. Okay, and then
Mhm.
he actually, so what happened is, he's already in Nityasiddha, but it is mentioned that because of his unintentional offenses, his bhakti was kind of, it went down for
Mhm.
timing. So now obviously here Rupa Goswami not at fault. And similarly, we have the pastime of Ambrish Maharaj also, right? Where Durvasa Muni is coming and then he is cursing him without any reason. So similarly here also Indradyumna Maharaj, he is also completely faultless, but still Agastya Muni, because he felt he offended him, he cursed him. So actually, if you analyze this situation, one thing we understand that Durvasa Muni was actually punished by the Lord, and he released his Sudarshan Chakra, and then Durvasa Muni started seeking shelter of Brahma, Shiva, and finally went to Vishnu, right? So he was punished. But here in this case, you will see that Agastya Muni was not punished by the Lord. In fact, it was Agastya Muni who actually kind of committed offense to Indradyumna Maharaj by cursing him, because devotees also, they cannot, even though they are very advanced, Krishna's entire dynasty was destroyed. Even though they were direct descendants of Krishna, the entire dynasty of Krishna was destroyed just because they made fun of Narad Muni and other sages. And then Narad Muni cursed them, right? So obviously this was an illusion which was created by the Lord, because the dynasty of the Lord is eternal. They are all Nityasiddhas, associates of the Lord. But again, these are all different lessons that we have to learn from it. And who is teaching us these lessons? These lessons are taught by the acharyas, because without that, it is very bewildering. You just imagine if we had no Prabhupada purports and we had no purports by the previous acharyas. Like, for example, even in the Gajendra pastime also, it's so interesting that Gajendra was actually not calling Vishnu. He was not calling Vishnu. He was just calling out the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He didn't even knew who is the Supreme Person. Okay. Yeah. So what happened is, Vishwanath Thakur explains in this regards that actually the demigods, they felt offended because he was not taking shelter of them. He was not asking help from them. So then the demigods, when Vishnu comes along with Garuda, that time the demigods also assemble, and the demigods also, they start worshipping Vishnu, and they start offering paraphernalia to Lord Vishnu. Why? Because they were afraid that they committed offenses to Vishnu, because they thought that Gajendra did not approach them. So they were also fearful of committing offenses to Vishnu, and that's why they started worshipping Vishnu. Okay, and then so actually after the appearance of Vishnu, Gajendra actually knew that, okay, this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now Gajendra's past life, as we know, is Indradyumna Maharaj, but somehow he was able to remember the prayers, by the special mercy of the Lord, just like Jad Bharata. Okay. Another interesting point is that Gajendra, now you see, he is going back to Godhead after the body of giving up the body of Gajendra. As you rightly said, that he was not interested in taking another body in the material world, not willing to continue also with the same body. So he immediately wanted to go back to Godhead, right? And so the Lord fulfilled his desire. But you see, very interesting thing is that he went back in the body of an animal, but he attained Sarupya Mukti, which means he attained the 400 form of Vishnu, similar form as Vishnu, right? Sarupya Mukti. So now, so this also reminds us that, when Prabhupada says, when someone dies in Vrindavan, if they have committed sinful activities, they will take animal bodies in the next life, and then after giving up the body, they will go back to Goloka. So this is also one evidence that, how Prabhupada also said that if someone is staying in the Dham, and if they commit aparadha or sinful activities in the Dham, then they take animal bodies in the next life in the Dham itself, and after giving up that animal form, they will go back to the spiritual world. So generally this will not happen, because we know that in the animal body, you cannot actually, you don't have opportunity to practice Krishna consciousness. You will have to take another birth. Now you see, in the contrast, you see Jad Bharat's example. He took the form of a deer, but then he had to again come as Jad Bharata. So 3 lifetimes. But here Gajendra went back to God in the second lifetime itself, right? So, there are, so these are all technical details, and it is so interesting to know that the entire Bhagavatam is actually dealing with how to deal with offenses. Everything. You see all cantos. This 8 cantos, 7 canto, Narasimha and Prahlad Maharaj, you see how Hiranyakashipu offended and he was destroyed. Then you turn to 6th canto, you see how Indra also committed offense Then we have Chitraketu Maharaj also came as Vitrasur, then Daksha also, right? And then fifth canto also we have example of Jad Bharat, like Jiva Goswami mentions that he had a previous aparadh. That's why he had to fall down from King Bharat's position. So you'll see, if you write from first canto till all these cantos, effect of offenses are very exemplified in each and every one of them. So I think it is very important also to focus that we have to be very careful about the offenses, and at the same time we have to note one thing very clearly, that for pure devotees, these are just examples, these are just lessons that we have to learn from. They cannot actually commit any offenses. One very interesting thing is, which I recollect in this context, is about Vritrasur. Now Vritrasur, apparently Chitraketu Maharaj had offended Lord Shiva, and Vishwanath Thakur gives a amazing commentary to this. So he gives multiple reasons what is happening here. But one thing is that Chitraketu Maharaj had already attained Lord Sankarsana. He had already attained prema for him. So that's why Vishwanath Thakur also mentions that it does not matter for pure devotees to transform or to change bodies, because they are still at the level of prema. As Chitraketu, he was at the level of prema, and as Vritrasur, he was at the level of prema. So he was just doing his service. It does not matter for them. Okay. So this is something that we have to learn. These pure devotees, they are just, the Lord is using them as instruments to teach us that we have to be careful against all these offenses. No matter who you are in the material world, if you commit offenses to a devotee, you will be destroyed, or you will lose your, lose everything. So yeah. So here similarly, because Indradyumna Maharaj, he had no faults. There is no past history which is described by the acharyas, and so it obviously makes sense to say that he was probably attained the level of prema, and then he took a body of the elephant, and then he went back to Godhead, right? So he was already aware of his Swarupa in the previous life, right? So whereas, yeah, now you also mentioned about the Gandharva who was cursed, and you did mention a point, a very nice point, that the curse was a blessing ultimately, the curse by Deva Rishi. And now see, this is also another angle, that whenever a pure devotee is cursing someone, ultimately it turns out to be the most beneficial for that person. So here we see that Prabhupada does mention in the purport to this particular incident, and he says that if he would have continued as a Gandharva, he would have taken more births. Okay, but in order to somehow rectify that, in order to shorten that duration, he was cursed. Deva Rishi cursed him, and it was actually a mercy. And that's why Prabhupada also says that after he was killed as a crocodile by Vishnu, he attained again, he reinstated the position of Gandharva, and then obviously he went back to Godhead after after fulfilling the duty and service as a Gandharva. After giving up that body, he went back to Godhead. So again, now the mercy of pure devotees is infinite. So similar pastime of Narad Muni also cursing Nalakuvera and Manigriva, Damodar pastime, right? So they did attain again their demigod positions, but after leaving that demigod position, they went back to Godhead. So this was the mercy, special mercy of the pure devotees, the intervention of the pure devotees. Yeah. So these are the few comments that I had related to the previous life and the effects of offenses. Okay. Yeah. So any devotees, they have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I was just thinking that how, Gajendra was so much focused on seeking shelter. I mean, if literally, we get some pain, or we get distracted sometimes, instead of actually going deeper and taking shelter, we might just, think of ways to forget, to elevate our pain and suffering. Our mind goes to different places to look for relief rather than just taking shelter. So focus is so important.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and I really like the point you mentioned about that bhakti is very deep. We have to monitor ourselves. That's so important. In fact, I have a realization that because we do ask this question about going back to Godhead, and when are we qualified? Can we go back to Godhead in this life? All these questions are there, but I think the most important question for a devotee is that how much we are able to, uh, you know, like as Prabhupada said that my devotees, they are known as perfect gentlemen, right?
Mm.
So this is so important actually, and I think every devotee has to be refined in order to qualify themselves to go back to Godhead, unless and until they are doing some exemplary, extraordinary service for Srila Prabhupada. So then maybe they can expect some kind of special mercy of Prabhupada, and he will take care of all the anarthas that they have. But I think the devotees who are not doing, so much for Prabhupada's mission, the preaching and all that, uh, I think they have to also. There's a long way to go for them,
Yeah.
and because the services are the practical things that will test us in the journey. If you don't take a service, don't take a responsibility, you will not know where you are, what is your level.
Mm.
So unless and until we take some service, I think obviously it will be very difficult for us to evaluate ourselves. And I also like the point about you mentioning about the chanting and hearing is also one of the most important factors to uh, kind of understand how much advancement we are making. Obviously, the taste has to increase with time, and detachment has to also develop. Detachment for the material world or the material consciousness. Right, that's true. But it's very interesting to know that, like one time Mahatma Prabhu he had shared a video podcast, and I think some devotees asked him that even if devotees are committing offenses, still they are able to chant the holy name on a regular basis. Still they are able to do sadhana on a regular basis. So how do we understand all these things? Because we see that they are not falling down. They are steady with their sadhana and all that. Even and there are also subtle offenses that we keep committing. Um, so these things are very these are very deep things. It's not easy to understand superficially. We can clearly understand these things from the pastimes of the Lord, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, from all the shastras also we understand, and that's why it's very important to take shelter of a devotee. And obviously this is a conclusion of our uh, Vaishnav Sampradaya, that without taking shelter of devotees, without smearing the dust of the devotees, it's not possible to attain the Lord, right? In fact, in one place it is also mentioned that even if we try to uh, perfectly worship the Lord, but there is no guarantee that we will attain success. But even if we imperfectly serve the devotees of the Lord, then there is a guarantee, or there is there is a guarantee that we'll attain perfection. So this is the principle, in all the Vaishnava Sampradayas, especially emphasized by Ramanujacharya, and then obviously Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sampradaya, to be the servant of servant. Yeah, so these are some very important things to be considered. And in fact, it's one of the topics that Aritra Prabhu has organized through ISKCON Orlando. I'll be speaking next month on the topic of why devotees don't make quick advancement in bhakti. So there are many points in that. Yeah, and I'm also happy and privileged that Lisha Mataji also has organized um, through her congregation on the topic of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's visit to Vrindavan, which will be next week, next Sunday. So yeah, all the devotees, if they are able to join, that will be nice. But it was a very nice class, Mataji. Thank you so much. You have covered many points, and as Aritra also said, the analogies that you gave, they were very They were very driving to the point. So,
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
so you pray, Mataji, that my cobweb and the concoction that I have is destroyed, and I am able to do some service for devotees and Guru and Gauranga.
Yeah, Prabhu, we want to serve you. You said that serving a devotee imperfectly is better, so we have to serve you to get there now.
No, Mataji. I am way far from the standard of a devotee. So,
No.
okay, yeah. Okay, devotees, they have any comments, questions? Aditya Prabhu, you wanted to say something? Okay, Swati Mataji?
No,
Yeah.
no, not
Okay.
really.
Swati Mataji?
No,
Okay.
Prabhuji.
Yeah, so what I have already shared the link, Facebook link on the chat box. You can, what I will do is I will download the video and I will upload in my YouTube channel. And Alisha Mataji, you can take it from there. You can share
All
once it is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let me disconnect from Facebook.